Humanity includes imperfection. If there are still people who have not yet noticed this sad thing in themselves, they should look more closely. We make mistakes, we offend each other, we are thoughtless. Our humankind has never been perfect. Our history is full of evidence of imperfection. It is also worth looking more carefully at the Church's teaching on the initial state of perfection in paradise. It is not true that sometimes, long time ago, we have fallen out of our state of perfection and thus become sinners. As humans, we have always been and are hopefully still moving towards perfection. However, it is still far ahead of us, if we will even ever get there. The account of the fall found in the early pages of our Bible, Genesis 3, has been used in our teaching to describe our profound sinfulness and to explain why it is so. In relation to God, we are no longer in the state into which He created us, they say. We need salvation. It is true that we need help into our state of selfishness, and that is why we are talking about forgiveness today. The account of the fall is, after all, a story of growth in how everyone must grow from childhood to adulthood, from happy irresponsibility and being taken care of to responsibility and caring for others. It really isn't easy for anyone. All of us have experienced that awakening from the fairy tale world of childhood to the hard reality of adults, where we ourselves are no longer at the center of everything, but must take responsibility, where we must start caring for bread and our livelihood, where you must leave paradise and there is no going back. Child play has changed into adult work and sweat. We are part of creation. We are part of the evolutionary process. So we've never been perfect. We are just growing towards it. At least I hope so. After all, we have had teachers all over the world, great people who have looked beyond their own selfishness and wanted to promote the common good for all. In our tradition, we have had prophets, and above all, we have always Jesus, who in teaching love gave even his own life for us. Love took him completely. But do we still, as humankind, ever learn the difficult lesson of loving each other? I don't know, but I believe and I hope that it could someday happen, even though it seems very unlikely. I guess the problem in part, is that all of us humans walk our own path from childhood to adulthood. We are at different stages in our lives. We all move from selfishness to the common good, from me mentality to sharing and consideration for others. We leave our homes and become inhabitants of our city and then of our country, and eventually we will be citizens of the world. Unfortunately, this development does not seem to be happening to everyone. And after all this, as we begin to learn our homework, it is time to leave this earth and move to home in heaven. So we are imperfect, and because of that, humankind cannot live without forgiveness. We all need it so much during our journey to a better understanding of life. In life there are all kinds of situations and many things happen. If there were no forgiveness, who could cope? We have learned forgiveness in our relationship with God. How easy it is to ask God for forgiveness without thinking about it in more detail. After all, we have a sacrifice protecting us while approaching God. I guess God can do anything but forgive us. Forgive me when I appeal to the sacrifice of His Son. He's obliged to forgive me. Would that be so? How did those Israelites once do? They appealed to their victims, but God was not pleased. It was not so simple. Sacrifices and justice belonged together then and now also. Prophets, those uncompromising proclaimers of God's will, made it clear that unjust treatment of a neighbor did not belong together with a relationship with God. It was not as simple as many claimed it to be. Who even was it to make the fatal mistake that the images of God in the Old Testament and the New Testament could be so easily, so painlessly connected through sacrifices? The victims of the Old Testament were exchanged for Jesus as a sacrifice. He who had also said that God is more interested in justice than in sacrifices. He was himself made a sacrifice. In addition, there are preachers today who say, and I have heard it myself, that listening to Jesus himself is a heresy. Through it one gets under the law and Jesus' victim sacrifice becomes useless, they say. Insane, I say. So we can ask God for forgiveness for what we have done to others, and we believe in His forgiveness as if our transgressions were not real, as if they had no effect on those whom they hurt. It is somehow strange that God can, like taking the bypass, forgive even what we cannot or even want not to settle with another person. strange religion. God favors his own and stands for them. So there is a strange contradiction in the fact that we can ask God for forgiveness and we assume that it is self-evident that he cannot but forgive us because of Jesus' death. How then could it be possible that if he forgives us, we did not have to forgive those who sin against us? This is not real. That can't be the case. Jesus even told a parable about this kind of case. In Jesus' story, a servant who had been forgiven of a huge debt strangles his own debtor from the throat for a few coins. The master of that servant hears about it and withdraws his forgiveness. And when you read it, it seems for you to be the right thing to do. After all, no one can act like that pitiless servant. Hey, come on! How can anyone complain that Jesus is saying something wrong here? That it would be in somehow unreasonable to demand that we forgive those who have transgressed against us. On an emotional level, it is always difficult. Injustice to me would seem to require reparation. But you know what? A nasty memory can also be something nice to keep in one's mind. Holding another person captive, not letting him or her go so easily. As you stand and pray, forgive everything you have against someone, then also your Father which is in heaven will forgive you your trespasses. This is what Jesus says in the Gospel of Mark. So it is not worth coming to meet God with an unforgivable mind. Indeed, God is on the side of the one who is not forgiven, on the side of the one who is not loved, on the side of the one who is rejected for his guilt. In his letter, James writes, "Judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful." Mercy triumphs over judgment. Christianity involves understanding of life. It is important to understand that we all need forgiveness. We are not perfect, but we grow and we evolve. We need God's forgiveness, but most of all, we need forgiveness from each other. We must forgive. It is also part of the love that God expects of us. By forgiving, we are loving. By forgiving, we also love ourselves, for any kind of bitterness makes one sick. So forgiving is also a good deed for ourselves. Forgiveness is releasing. In Luke there are the words of Jesus, "Release and you will be released." One who is not forgiven is like a bird in a cage. How would anyone be pleased to keep another person in the shackles of his or her unforgiveness, locked in a small cage? Wouldn't it be the time to release that bird so that it could fly free and be happy again, so that everyone could rejoice and be happy again? Thank you for watching this message from Jyväskylä, and see you next time in 2 weeks in Taulumäki Church at the same time at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. In the evening. Bye bye.